So I'm running a mastermind and I'm breaking down attrition, which is simply the number of customers who start a program versus the number who finish. And it's always less than those at the end than it is at the beginning. And this was a group of high level entrepreneurs. I think every business in there was $1 million plus a year at the very least. And I said to them, I go, listen, even you in this room, if I were to put you through a program, it's likely that 80% of you would drop off before you made it halfway through. And they got upset. They were like, no, that's not possible. And I said, well, why do people drop off? Why do customers quit before they finish? And the common response I got was because they're lazy. And I've heard that response over the years constantly, over and over and over again. And what's at play here is what's called the attribution error. And the attribution error is very fascinating because if you understand this, it allows you to unlock the power of empathy. And empathy is one of the best states that I feel that you could be in if you want to feel better about yourself, if you want to connect with others, and in business, if you want to make money connecting with employees, connecting with subcontractors, and to me, connecting with the end customer, feeling empathetic to their plight allows me to better solve problems for them, empower them, and that's how I make the big money, okay? So what is this attribution error that we speak of? It's a cognitive flaw that we're all hardwired at birth pretty much to adhere to, and it makes sense because we act on impartial information when we assess others, when we have more information of ourselves. When we see others, we generally have the externalities. When we see ourselves or when we know what we're going through, we have both the internals and the externals. So this is what I mean. Attribution, first of all, is to define this. It is the cause of a behavior or an outcome. And so people say, hey, customers don't take action because they're lazy. The attribution is laziness. But that's very limited in its viewpoint. It doesn't tell the whole story most often. Because if you actually did an examination very critically, you'd find laziness probably way down on the list. And I'll make the case as to why. But let me give you an example first. I'm sure there's some point in time in your life in the recent past where you made a dumb mistake, something that you normally don't make as a mistake, but for whatever reason you made it. And let's just say here was the reason. The night before you couldn't sleep because the baby was up all night crying, or the dog was up all night barking, or for whatever reason you accidentally drank caffeinated, fully dark brewed strong coffee and you thought you were drinking decaf. Whatever the case may be, you were up all night. Now it's a situational cause to why you may have made a mistake. So because you were tired, you didn't sleep well, you screwed up when normally you wouldn't screw up if you would have a normal night's sleep. Now, I might not know that. As an observer on the outside, I wouldn't know if you got a good night's sleep or not. It's assumed that most people get a good night's sleep. When we look at a situation and we say, hey, a customer's lazy because they don't complete a program, we might not know that they're dealing with an illness, a physical illness, a mental illness. We might not know that they're taking care of a loved one who has dementia, who no longer can really think straight. And not only is that taking up their time, it's really messing with their headspace because that's a massive thing to deal with, right? So if we make a mistake, we generally, and this is good to preserve the ego, we generally assign it to a situation, whether it's accurate or not. If somebody else makes a mistake, we generally assign it to a character trait. You made a mistake, you're stupid. I made a mistake, it's because I didn't sleep well last night. Okay? Now, sometimes do we use excuses when we should not use excuses? Certainly. But most often the case is we tend to judge very quickly character traits, usually negative or harsh character traits. And that locks the door to empathy, and it also makes you feel bad. I discover when I'm judging other people, at least for me, I don't feel as in state, as harmonious in flow, and so on and so forth, okay? So there is the character attribution, there is the situational attribution. I like to think of one as an internal and one as an external. And I don't want to judge a situation without the full information. And so I want to access both the internal and the external, both character considerations and situational attributions, if you will, right? So what's going on around us, the context, and what's going on inside of us. If I have a fuller viewpoint and picture of that, I tend to make better decisions, and I tend to feel better when I make those decisions. And life becomes easier, and I have more empathy, and I seem to just go through the world without as much stress, okay? So how can we use this? So here's the best thing that I would love for you to do is I want you to take a look at a situation in your life where you judge yourself very harshly. Why can't I take action? Why is it? Why am I afraid to speak up for myself? I'm a pushover. Any number of situations. Now think about it. In those areas where you feel really bad, you're like, man, I can't get this done. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Any of those areas, it is almost always a character attribution. I can't speak up because I lack confidence. Or there's something wrong with me because I'm a pushover, I'm weak-willed, I have low self-esteem, etc., etc. Okay? So I'll give you an example in my life. I always felt that there was something wrong with me because as a child, I had a really tough childhood. And so I felt because I did something wrong, I didn't deserve love like a normal kid would deserve. And it's crazy how we make these connections, but we do. We all have some weird connections like that, especially a child with limited cognitive abilities. And so that's an attribution of self, of character. I did something wrong. Now, it ignores all the externalities, the situation, such as the situation was my mom was a kid when she had me, basically. I think she was a high school senior, if that. And she had tons of trauma in her life growing up. And my dad, same thing. My dad had a lot of trauma in his life, too. And so they bring their trauma into the situation, and that limits them. There was a lot of addiction, drug addiction, and alcohol addiction, where I was growing up, a lot of instability in that environment, in that situation, if you will. And so for me to make an assessment of I did something wrong, ignoring the full spectrum and aspect of things going on, the problem with that was I carried that with me wherever I went for 30 years. And so I would be quick to say, I did this wrong, I did that wrong. The fear of doing things wrong, it started to creep in when it would generalize. And when I realized, okay, there's parts about myself I certainly can work on, and I can do that without critical, harsh judgment. But at the same time, ignoring situations that are out of my control and not factoring those in, it's going to limit me. So when I was more open to the idea of, hey, listen, this is the best you did, this is the best they did, this was the circumstance, and this was the situation. And so now I have less judgment, therefore I have more clarity, therefore I feel lighter and I can move forward much easier. So I want you to look at that in your own life. What's an area of your life where maybe you've judged yourself too harshly? And maybe, even if it's accurate, like maybe you are playing small in areas of your life where you should play big, and you certainly have the capabilities, but you're holding it back. Figure out why you're holding it back. And if there's situational aspects, you can switch situations a lot easier than you can switch character traits. So find yourself situations that are more conducive and minimize situations that are less conducive. And then do this for others, either someone close to you as an individual or a group of people. For better or worse, we make stereotypical judgments against whole groups of people, oftentimes that we've never even met, right? And so customers are lazy is a group of people with a harsh judgment assigned to them. I see this a lot with coaching is, my customers are too cheap. That's a character judgment. What is the situation? Is there a reason they're cheap, or is the situation maybe perhaps they don't understand the value of what you offer? And if they did, maybe they wouldn't be so cheap. So that character judgment tends to limit your ability to be creative with how you solve a problem. When you look at the situation, you say, what are some of the things that could influence that situation that could cause a different outcome? That can be super empowering to you. So there you go. That's the attribution error. If you tap into this, if you rewrite this error, you sit with it a little bit, you're going to be able to unlock a lot more empathy, and it's going to make you feel better. And then as a result, you typically do better. Jason Flavin here. If there's something that you have as a switch that flips over from this video, go ahead and leave a comment there. And of course, I would love it if you liked and subscribed, and I'll talk with you soon.